Election day is here, and Sabato's crystal ball is calling a victorious night for Democrats in the House, Senate, and the White House.
So the final predictions show Joe Biden at 321 electoral votes and Donald Trump at 217, with Democrats slightly favored to win the Senate and favored to win the House. Managing editor at Sabato's crystal ball, Kyle Kondik, joins us to discuss the final ratings just hours ahead of the election. Great to see you, Kyle.
Good to see you, Kyle.
Thanks for having me.
We want to get to the Senate, but let's start with your presidential map. The bold call, well, there were a lot of bold calls, but one that really caught people's attention was putting Georgia in the Biden column. What made you all move forward with that prediction?
I think it was a combination of factors. Polling is pretty close. There's some indications from both sides that the early vote was maybe a little bit better for Democrats than maybe expected. We've also heard, and I'm not the only person to say this, I think it's been pretty widely reported that there's a lot of Republican pessimism about Georgia. What you're seeing is that the historically Republican suburbs of Atlanta are kind of zooming Democratic at a pretty fast rate, particularly a couple of the congressional districts there, including Georgia 6, which hosted that now famous special election in 2017 that this year's Senate nominee, John Ossoff, ended up losing. Democrats captured that district in 2018. There's just a big Democratic trend in those places. Of course, the kind of white rural areas across the state are going to be overwhelmingly for Trump, both in the northern Georgia and southern Georgia. But our indications were that, I think Georgia's pretty close to a toss-up, but we're giving a slight edge to Biden.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kyle, talk about Arizona as well. That's something that I think people are having a very hard time putting their arms around, which is how does a state go from 3.5 and 9 points for Romney in 2012 to a toss-up and possible Biden, as you guys predict for tomorrow or tonight?
I mean, look, it's just the trend lines that we've seen during both in 2016 with Trump's election and then following Trump's election, in that a lot of these kind of traditionally Republican, affluent, highly educated suburban areas have just been getting a little more Democratic over time. There are positive demographic trends for Democrats at some of these places. We saw Democrats had a pretty good election night in Arizona in 2018. Not necessarily that the midterm is predictive of a presidential election, but there seem to be some relatively clear trends in that state. That doesn't necessarily mean Biden's going to win it, but I do think at the very least it's going to be closer than 2016 was. The polling has basically shown kind of a small but persistent edge for Joe Biden and a little bit bigger edge for Mark Kelly, the Democratic Senate candidate, against the appointed Republican Senator Martha McSally.
Yeah, so let's use that to pivot to the Senate outlook. What does your picture look like overall? What seats do you think that Democrats can reasonably expect to take from Republicans tonight?
There's been a lot of focus throughout the entire campaign season on what some have dubbed the quote, core four Democratic Senate targets: Colorado, Arizona in the West, Maine in the Northeast, and North Carolina in the Sun Belt. We narrowly favor the Democrats in Maine and North Carolina. We think they maybe have a bigger edge in Arizona and especially Colorado. If the Democrats flip those four, they should be in decent shape to get to 50 at least in the Senate, which they hope that a Vice President Kamala Harris would break that tie in their favor. Republicans, of course, are going to pick up Alabama almost certainly, where Democrat Doug Jones is running for a full term. And then you've got a bunch of other states that we lean to the Republicans, like Iowa, Montana, South Carolina, even Alaska and Texas. Those states are all close. I think the Republicans have a little bit of an edge there. But you can see if the Democrats had a big night, the map could kind of crack open and the Democrats could end up, north of 50 Senate seats. But at the same time, the Republicans are definitely still in the game to hold the Senate. And then the sort of the wild card is that you've got two races in Georgia, one of which is guaranteed essentially to go to a runoff on January 5th. And the regular Senate race between John Ossoff and Republican Senator David Perdue seems likelier than not to go to a runoff, although there's possibility that either Perdue or Ossoff could get over 50% and avoid that runoff.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Kyle, to see that the balance of power hitting at 50, that has all sorts of policy implications. If you were to guess one way or the other, which is Republicans keeping the Senate or keeping majority control of the Senate, or Democrats winning an outright majority, where are some of the margins that we see in the Senate on where things might go?
Well, again, I mean, if it's 50-50 in the Senate with Vice President Harris hypothetically breaking the ties, I think it's going to be hard for Democrats to do some of the big picture legislating that they want to do. I mean, if you're trying to eliminate the filibuster and admit the District of Columbia as a state, those are things that are going to be easier to do if you've got 53 or 54 seats than if you've only got 50 plus tiebreak, because you have to keep the whole caucus together. And again, I think that, just in terms of the race for majority control, I would focus on Iowa, Maine, and North Carolina. I think the party that wins at least two of those three is probably going to be in the majority. And again, Republicans are still in the game here. I mean, I think that whatever you think Joe Biden's odds of winning the presidency are, I think the Democrats' odds of winning the Senate are smaller. And I think the Democrats are favored in both. But the Senate, I think the Senate's a little bit closer. And obviously, if Trump comes back and wins, the Senate is not going to flip, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if Democrats have 50 and they're counting on a Kamala Harris tiebreak, that means that everything you do, you have to get Joe Manchin's approval of. I mean, that's basically what I got Kristen Sinema or any other of the more conservative members of the caucus. Okay, one more on the presidential race, because I can't resist. You pushed Florida to Trump again. What are the factors that you're looking at in that state in particular?
The Democrats just always seem to end up on the sort of the short end of the stick in that state, although the races this decade have all been really competitive. If you look at the 2010, 2014, 2018 gubernatorial races, also the 2012 and 2016 presidential, all those races were decided by about a point and a quarter or less. And the Democrats went 1-4 in those races. Only Obama triumphed in 2012. There are a lot of moving pieces in the state. It seems like Biden's probably going to do better in places like the Tampa, St. Petersburg area. It seems like Trump's probably going to do better than he did in 2016 in Miami-Dade. The early vote numbers, I mean, it's an extraordinary number of votes already cast in advance between mail and early ballots. I don't think they really gave us a clear signal one way or the other. And to me, without sort of a clear signal, the Democrats are favored. We decided to lean it to Trump. But also, so we leaned Georgia and North Carolina to Biden, Florida to Trump. We're just trying to kind of get the overall number right. We hope to get as close as we can. So maybe there's a world in which, Florida votes for Biden and Georgia and North Carolina stick with Trump, and that wouldn't really change the overall arithmetic all that much. I think the key point is that I think those three states are all really close. And I think Ohio's close too, in a must-win state for Trump.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see those dynamics. I also think Trump's probably going to pull it out in Florida. But Kyle, we're going to talk to you later tonight. So thanks for joining us, my friend.
Yeah, we'll see you back here tonight, Kyle. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Next on Rising, we're going to hear from Hill reporter Reed Wilson on swing states that could decide the fate of tonight's election. That's when Rising returns.